Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining our discussion today as we continue the selection of the Time Go Show. Namu MyoHoRenGeKyo. Thank you so much for being here. Now, we left off where Nichiren was quoting the Lotus Sutra itself as to its placement amongst all of the various sutras and teachings. And he was talking about the seventh volume of the Lotus Sutra. And he now continues. The seventh volume also says, quote, "A person who can accept and uphold this sutra is likewise foremost among all living beings." So now he's going to pick throughout history the teachings, the different sutras that have been supported by different people over time, going back to Nagarjuna and others. And this is not to say that those people solely supported these other sutras, but he's demonstrating that the schools have evolved and changed over time. And some have stopped growing, stopped changing, stopped, excuse me, checking my camera there, and have basically stalled out on an earlier sutra and haven't followed the sutras themselves, because the Lotus Sutra states several times, and this is what he's pointing out, that he's not making this up. Tendai didn't make this up. Mialo didn't make this up. Dengyo didn't make this up. It's stated in the words of Shakyamuni Buddha, which are relative, provisional, essential teachings. And the Lotus Sutra does a very emphatic job of pointing this out. So how these other teachers would then, choose not to listen to that? If they claim to be experts and authoritarian sources of the Buddha's teachings, then how can they selectively contradict the Buddha's teachings to promote some other level, some other... Are they putting themselves ahead of the Buddha and saying, okay, Shakyamuni, good job and all, but we're just going to use this part of your teachings because over there we think you just kind of lost it? How are they assuming this superiority over the teachings they say they're promoting, and yet devise their own, offshoot? It shouldn't even be called Buddhism by rights, right? If you want to adopt some of what is being said and then promote your own vision or stature on the basis of those teachings, then what you're teaching is your teaching, not Buddha's. Does that make sense? I mean, you can't say you're a mathematician, but when you get to algebra, you go off and say, okay, everything after algebra, that's for other people. You don't need to know that. I'm going to invent my own algebra, and that's going to be the pinnacle of mathematics. I don't think you would last long in the schools of mathematics, right? You would be very, very, very fringe, right? Well, that's what's happening with Buddhist teaching. So Nichiren's going to in another way yet explore the scholarship to demonstrate that this isn't a matter of opinion. It's just fact. So here he goes. Let us consider, he says, what this passage means. The other sutras have their upholders. Thus, the Flower Garland Sutra is upheld by the Bodhisattva Universal Worthy, Moon of Deliverance, Nagarjuna, and Ashvaghosha, the great teacher Fatsang, the teacher of the nation Qingliang, Empress Wu, the preceptor Shinjo, the administrator of monks Roben, and Emperor Shomu. The profound secrets and wisdom sutras have their supporters. Bodhisattva superlative truth appearing, the venerable Subhuti, the great teacher Chia Xiang, the Tripitaka master Xuan Chang, the emperor Tu Tsung and Kao Tsung, the monks Kanroku and Dosho, the emperor Kotoku. Upholding the Mahavajrayana Sutra of the true word school are Vajrasattva, the Bodhisattvas Nagarjuna and Nagabodhi, King Satavahana, the Tripitaka master Shanwu Wei, Ching Chang Chi, and Pu Kung, the emperors Xuan Tsung and Dai Tsung, Hua Kyo, and the great teacher Kobo and Chikaku. And upholding the Nirvana Sutra are Bodhisattva Kashyapa, the 52 types of beings, and the Tripitaka master Dharmaraksha. Fa Yun of Kung She Su Temple and the 10 eminent monks, 3 from southern China and 7 from northern China, also embraced sutras other than the Lotus Sutra. So this is from historical documents through about 1,000 years, and the sutras themselves. So you have a mixture of actual people and personages. But if, in contrast to all these, the ordinary people in the negative influence world of the latter age, those who do not observe a single one of the precepts, and who appear to others to be ichantikas, firmly believe, as the sutra states, that there is no path to Buddhahood outside of the Lotus Sutra, which surpasses all other sutras preached before, at the same time, or after it, then such people, though they may not have a particle of understanding, are 100,000, 10,000 million times superior to those great sages who uphold the other sutras. That is what this passage from the Lotus Sutra is saying. Among the supporters of the other... Now you understand what that means, right? That means you and me. Right? We're not practicing the austerities of Hinayana or the all of these precepts and rules for behavior in these earlier schools of Buddhism, right? We're not living in monasteries. We're not observing, we're not living a chaste life. Some may be, but in general, we're not. What he's saying is you and I, ordinary people, because we understand that immediate enlightenment, Buddhahood, is available to us only through the Lotus Sutra, through MyoHoRenGeKyo, that we can invoke and awaken our Buddha nature in this life, in this moment, solely based on the ultimate teaching of the Lotus Sutra, understanding that it sits atop all of the rest of the scholarship, but the Lotus Sutra is the sutra where this ability, this awakening, this immediacy is documented and taught. And no previous sutra is this revelation given to us. We understand that. That understanding alone makes us superior Buddhists, superior Buddhist practitioners than anyone, no matter what height they've reached in scholarship, who follow these previous sutras while denying that the Lotus Sutra is the ultimate teaching. Well, we are superior to any of them and all of them. This is what the Lotus Sutra is saying in the 7th volume. And Nichiren is clarifying it yet further. Among the supporters of the other sutras, there are some who encourage other people to uphold such sutras temporarily as a step toward leading them to the Lotus Sutra. There are others who continue to cling to the other sutras and never move on to the Lotus Sutra, and there are still others who not only continue to uphold other sutras, but are so intensely attached to them that they even declare the Lotus Sutra to be inferior to such sutras. But the votaries of the Lotus Sutra should now keep the following in mind. The Lotus Sutra says that just as among all the rivers, streams, and other bodies of water, for example, the ocean, is foremost, so a person who upholds the Lotus Sutra is likewise. It goes on to say, this is directly from the Lotus Sutra, it goes on to say that as among all the stars and their like, the moon, a god's sun, is foremost, so a person who upholds the Lotus Sutra is likewise. Keep these words in mind. All of the wise persons of Japan at the present time are like the host of stars, and I, Nichiren, am like the full moon. Question: is there anyone from times past who has spoken the way you have just done? Answer: the great teacher Dengyo states, one should understand that the sutras on which the other schools base their teachings are not foremost among the sutras, and those people who can uphold such sutras are not foremost amongst the multitude. But the Lotus Sutra, which is upheld by the Tendai Lotus School, is the foremost of all sutras, and therefore those who can uphold the lotus are foremost among living beings. This is borne out by the words of the Buddha himself. How could it be mere self-praise? End quote. A tick that attaches itself to the tail of a qilin can race 1,000 miles in one day, and a worthless man who accompanies a wheel-turning king can circle in an instant about the 4 continents of the world. Who would question the truth of such matters? Dengyo's words, quote, how would it be mere self-praise, end quote, should be kept in mind. He's talking about the Buddha's own words here, right? So you say you're a teacher of Buddhism, and as you study the scholarship of Buddhism, the founder, the creator of this practice, tells you that the Lotus Sutra is the ultimate point of his teaching. How can you then dismiss it as self-praise while you, with your ego, go off and teach these other provisional sutras as the ultimate? It doesn't make sense, does it? Unless you factor in that very human fallacy, fault of ego and self-praise, right? The machinations of people to create their own sphere of authority is constantly present in humanity. And now, in this latter day, as it is in Buddhism, in the 2020s, we see great examples of this everywhere in the world. The avarice, the greed for fame, for celebrity. It's all consuming. We see it everywhere, don't we? And it's very intoxicating, right? There are times in your own life when you can look back and think, yeah, what I was chasing didn't really make any sense other than self-gratification, some kind of edification. So we all have it in us. And we have to be vigilant about not letting our ego take over what we're doing. This is just part of being samsaric, right? So, moving on. If what he says is correct, then a person who upholds the Lotus Sutra just as it teaches must be superior to the King Brahma and more worthy than the Lord Shakra. If you have Asuras to help you, you can lift and carry even Mount Sumeru. If you have dragons in your employ, you can drain all the water in the ocean until it runs dry. The great teacher Dengyo says, quote, "Those who praise him will receive blessings that will pile up as high as Mount Calm and Bright, while those who slander him will be committing a fault that will condemn them to the hell of incessant suffering." Which, we hear this a lot, going to the hell of incessant suffering. This is an experiential statement about your life condition, not a place you go. But from the standpoint of Buddhism, life is suffering. And we can go into detail again about how that statement comes from the fact that our innate mechanisms of attachment are what ultimately create our life. We are born of desire, attachments, right? So it is a root nature of being human. So in that root nature, that very aspect of our life is what creates all our suffering. And if we don't do anything to remove ourselves from that habitual tendency, then we are in the hell of incessant suffering. It's incessant, it's ongoing, it compounds itself constantly, moment after moment. That's the hell of incessant suffering. Follow? So, if you're not doing anything to extricate yourself from that, to awaken from that, to liberate yourself from that, then you're not. That's what Buddhism is about. Living this life liberated from that attachment disease. Follow? So, if these golden words of Shakyamuni Buddha, the Lord of Teachings, are true, if the testimony to their truth given by many treasures Buddha is not false, and if the sign of ascent given by the Buddhas of the 10 directions when they extended their tongues is to be trusted, then there can be no doubt that all living beings in Japan at the present time are destined to fall into the hell of incessant suffering. In other words, stay your lot. The 8th volume of the Lotus Sutra says, quote, "In latter ages, if there are those who accept, uphold, read, and recite this sutra, their wishes will not be in vain, and in this present existence they will gain the reward of good fortune." It also says, if there is anyone who offers alms to them and praises them, then in this present life existence, he will have manifest reward for it. Reward in Buddhism is liberation from attachments. In these two passages are the words, "In this present existence they will gain the reward of good fortune," and "In this present existence he will have manifest reward for it." These two statements in their Chinese original each comprise 8 characters. If these 16 characters are meaningless, and if Nichiren does not receive some great reward in this present life, then these golden words of the Thus Come One will be in the same category as the empty lies of Devadatta, and the testimony of many treasures Buddha that guaranteed their truth will be no different from the baseless assertions of Kokalika. Then none of the people who slander the correct teaching will ever be condemned to the Avicii hell, and the Buddhas of the 3 existences will not exist. But could such a thing be possible? Therefore, I say to you, my disciples, try practicing as the Lotus Sutra teaches, exerting yourself without begrudging your lives. Test the truth of Buddhism now. Namu MyoHoRenGeKyo, Namu MyoHoRenGeKyo. Test it. He lays down a challenge. If you're so doubtful, then test it for yourself, which we keep circling back to this, right? Buddhism is a self-motivated, self-initiated, self-rewarding practice. It's your Buddhahood. No one else can give it to you. Question. In the Lotus Sutra, we find this passage, quote, "We care nothing for our bodies or lives, but are anxious only for the unsurpassed way," unquote. And the Nirvana Sutra says, quote, "For example, it is like a royal envoy, skilled in discussion and clever with expedient means, who, when sent on a mission to another land, would rather, even though it cost him his life, in the end conceal none of the words of his ruler. Wise persons, too, do this. In the midst of ordinary people, and without begrudging their lives, those who are wise should without fail proclaim the thus come one's prized teaching from the correct and equal sutras of the great vehicle that is, all living beings possess the Buddha nature." End quote. But under what circumstances should one be prepared to sacrifice one's life and safety? Didn't say anything about safety. I would like you to explain the matter to me in detail. All right. Answer. When I first embarked upon the Buddhist practice, I supposed that the statement, quote, we care nothing for our bodies or lives, meant receiving the imperial command and traveling to China the way men like Dengyo, Kobo, Jikaku, and Chisho did, or that it meant setting out from China as the Tripitaka master Xuanzang did, traveling all the way to India, dying 6 times in the attempt, and striving again with each rebirth. Or I thought that it meant throwing away one's life the way the boy Snow Mountains did in order to learn the second half of the verse, or burning one's arms as an offering for 72,000 years the way Bodhisattva Medicine King did. But if we go by the passage of scripture that you have quoted, these are not the kind of thing that is meant. As to this passage in the sutra, we care nothing for our bodies or lives. The sutra earlier describes the 3 types of enemies who will vilify and attack one with swords and staves, and in all likelihood deprive one of life and body. And to understand the passage in the Nirvana Sutra that speaks of carrying out one's duty, even though it costs him his life, quote, we should look at the passage later on in the same sutra that says, quote, there are ichantikas, or persons of incorrigible disbelief. They pretend to be arhats, living in deserted places and speaking slanderously of the correct and equal sutras of the great vehicle. When ordinary people see them, they all suppose that they are true arhats and speak of them as great bodhisattvas, end quote. Speaking of the third of the 3 types of enemies, the Lotus Sutra says, quote, or there will be forest-dwelling monks wearing clothing of patched rags and living in retirement. They will be respected and revered by the world as though they were arhats who possess the 6 transcendental powers. And the Parinirvana Sutra says, there are also ichantikas who resemble arhats, but who commit negative influence deeds. These passages from the sutras speak of powerful enemies of the correct teaching. Such enemies are to be found not so much among negative influence rulers and negative influence ministers, among non-Buddhists and negative influence kings, or among monks who disobey the precepts. Rather, they are those great slanderers of the law who are to be found among the eminent monks who appear to be upholders of the precepts and men of wisdom. The great teacher Miao Lo, speaking of such men, says, quote, the third group is the most formidable of all. This is because the second and third ones are increasingly hard to recognize for what they really are. The 5th volume of the Lotus Sutra says, quote, "This Lotus Sutra is the secret storehouse of the Buddhas, the thus come ones. Among the sutras, it holds the highest place." In this passage, we should note the words, "it holds the highest place." The phrase comprises 4 characters in the original. If we are to believe this passage, then we must say that the votary of the Lotus Sutra is one who proclaims the Lotus Sutra to stand supreme above all the others. Let us suppose now that there are many people who are held in great respect by the ruler, and that these people claim that they are their sutras superior to the Lotus Sutra, disputing with the votary of the Lotus Sutra on this point. They enjoy the trust and support of the ruler and his ministers, while the votary of the Lotus Sutra is a person of low station and humble learning. Therefore, the whole nation joins in heaping abuse on him. If at that time he conducts himself in the manner of Bodhisattva never disparaging, or the scholar Bhadraruchi, and continues to assert the superiority of the Lotus Sutra, he will almost certainly lose his life. To practice with such resolve in the face of this threat is the most important thing of all. Now that's the key to the original question. When we read in the sutras that you should dedicate yourself to your awakening through the teaching of the Lotus Sutra, through MyoHoRenGeKyo, you should do it with the kind of resolve and determination that one might experience if one was laying down one's life for something. It does not mean to lay down your life, because Buddhism is about living life to its utmost. So this expedient means this translation of language that tries to express the type of determination you must have in order to quickly fulfill your Buddhahood, fulfill your attainment. Has to be of this. It can't be like, well, I think I'll have bologna for lunch. That kind of commitment is weak. But imagine if you would eat no other food on earth unless it's bologna. What a strange analogy. But in other words, you would risk dying, starving to death, if not for the perfect food that you want to eat. That's a different level of determination, is it not? So that's what this language is saying, and Nichiren is explaining it here. Now I, Nichiren, am confronting just such a situation. Though I am a humble man, I have proclaimed that the great teachers Kobo and Chikaku, the Tripitaka master Shanwu Wei, Qingkang Chi, and Pukung, and others of their kind are potent enemies of the Lotus Sutra, and that if the words of the sutra are to be trusted, they have without doubt fallen into the hell of incessant suffering. To proclaim such a thing as this is a very grave step. I'm not being shy. I'm not being cowardly about defending the Lotus Sutra. I will not let these people step on it. It would be easier to walk naked into a raging fire, easier to take up Mount Sumeru in one's hands and toss it away, easier to hoist a great stone on one's back and walk across the ocean, than to do what I have done. Now what's he doing? He's using this colorful language because this colorful language is from the sutras. To establish the correct teaching in this country of Japan is indeed a difficult thing. So he's demonstrating with his life that this is the proper way to practice Buddhism. He's not backing down. He's not shying away. His level of determination, you could say, as these earlier quotes, is without regard to his life. But he does regard his life. He knows he's very important, if for no other reason than to be the votary of the Lotus Sutra. But the level of his determination is kind of like he's flaunting his life. Go ahead, try to kill me. I'm right. That kind of determination, that's a powerful thing. Now, if he's right, if he claims he's right about something that isn't right, then maybe he loses his life, because he doesn't get what? The protection of the Buddhist gods. Not that there are gods, not that it's a deification thing, not that this is a way of speaking. Especially a way of speaking in 13th century Japan. Right? If Shakyamuni Buddha, the Lord of teachings of the Pure Land of Eagle Peak, in other words, the Buddha that we read about in the Lotus Sutra, many treasures Buddha of the world of treasure purity, the Buddhas of the 10 directions who are Shakyamuni's emanations, the Bodhisattvas as numerous as the dust particles of 1,000 worlds who sprang up out of the earth, Brahma and Chakra and the gods of the sun and moon, and the 4 heavenly kings do not, conspicuously or inconspicuously, give me their protection and lend me aid, then they will never know a single day or a single hour of peace and safety. I got a little chill from that. So convinced, so assured of his propagation of the Lotus Sutra and all of the scholarship that backs him up, which he's always reminding us, he's not alone in this. He has predecessors like Dengyo, Miao Lo, Tendai, all the way back to Vasubandhu, Nagarjuna, and the Buddha himself, Shakyamuni. The scholarship that he's studied since he was 12 years old, and probably previous to that, but when he was 12, he was sent from home to go live as a monk and study. Everything tells him with absolute clarity that this is the practice of Buddhism, MyoHoRenGeKyo. And what he's saying here as he closes this Gosho out is, if I'm not correct, if what I'm doing isn't the actual words of the teachings, the goal of the teachings of Buddhism, then everything falls apart. He's like, you may remember I've said that I have gone to Gohonzon in times of great distress in my life. And I've looked at this mandala and I've demanded from it, show me my Buddha nature. I can't find it right now. Damn you, show it to me. And with that kind of emotion, Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo. Don't worry, you won't hurt Buddha's feelings. But I've been in my life, I've had some, we all have very low points, very scary points, things that we challenge in our lives. So we don't have to sit in front of our mandala, our Gohonzon, and chant meekly, like we're wandering through the forest not knowing where we're going. No, we must be determined. We must challenge this in our lives. So when we challenge this mandala as this physical object, that distracts our monkey mind so that we can awaken our Buddha nature. When we are emotional in front of it and committed in front of it, what are we emotional and challenging? It's our Buddha mind, our human mind. This is why Nichiren constantly uses the illusion of a mirror, a perfect mirror. So if you shout, Namu MyoHoRenGeKyo, demand your enlightenment, you're shouting and demanding of yourself. So don't be shy about it. Again, it's your Buddha nature, your enlightenment. Demand it. Have some passion. Have some determination. Earthly desires are enlightenment. Nichiren says this. Without your earthly desire, you cannot attain enlightenment. It's a conundrum, isn't it? So don't fall into bad habits of just falling asleep in front of your Gohonzon. How does that look to you? How does that look to your Buddha nature? Oh, wow. She's really committed. Truly. This is why we must chant with a rhythm like a galloping horse. We must fill our lungs with oxygen. We must focus on the mandala, because the mandala is our Gohonzon, our Buddha nature, our Buddha wisdom. Chant 30 minutes with that volition, that ichinen, and see if you don't feel different. It is life-altering. And that closes this Gosho, as well as, there's quite a lot of background information in here, as well as this third volume of a collection of the Gosho that I've put together. I see little typos I still need to correct. The next is book 4. I thank you so much for participating. It does my constitution good. So thank you for helping my practice. I hope that this helps yours and gives you something of a concrete sensation of your practice. Namu MyoHoRenGeKyo. Support the channel if you can, financially, or as I've said before, send candles or things that of offerings of the altar. Some of you have sent great gifts to help with the video production. John, I'm talking to you. Some of you, and you're listed on the placards at the beginning of this video on my Patreon supporters. Patrons are indeed a great blessing, and I'm incredibly thankful to you guys. And those of you who just managed to watch these videos or listen to the podcasts, a tremendous appreciation for your involvement. We keep growing in numbers, so our Sangha is doing its job. It's growing and influencing, and the appreciation for that goes well beyond me. Anyway, with that, send me some ideas on what you want to hear about before I start the next book of Gosho, so that we can touch on subjects that you may be struggling with or just want more information about. Challenge me. All right? And until next time, Namu MyoHoRenGeKyo. Take care of your health and strengthen your practice. Bye now.